Hi, everyone, and welcome to Subsistence Crop, a podcast cultivated by the Cannabis Studies Lab at Cal Poly Humboldt, where we talk about human cannabis relationships beyond commerce and prohibition. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to Subsistence Crop. Today, we have Caleb Chen here, and we're going to talk about his trip recently to Geneva, New York. Can you just tell us a little bit about you, Caleb, and your background at Cal Poly Humboldt?
I'm here as a second-year graduate student in the Master's in Public Sociology program. For those that don't know, the Cannabis Studies Bachelor's program is housed in the Sociology department here at Cal Poly Humboldt. So I get to work as a graduate research assistant alongside all these wonderful undergraduate research assistants.
Awesome. And then who are you in the cannabis industry as well?
Before coming back to school here to work on the Legacy Genetics grant, I was running a cannabis media site called The Highest Critic, and I've been working as a cannabis judge, ganjier, and buddhist, and really getting to explore the range of cannabis that is out there on the legal and illegal market nowadays.
Awesome. That's really interesting. And just to introduce myself, I'm Jada. I'm back here with another episode. I'm a sophomore at Cal Poly Humboldt, and I'm a cannabis studies major with a concentration in environmental stewardship. And I'm just going to move it on to our other student interviewers.
Hi, I'm Mason Reilly. I am also a sophomore here at Cal Poly Humboldt. I am a cannabis studies major, specifically in the social equity department. And now,
Hi, my name is Sonny Buckner. I am a double major in management and entrepreneurship, as well as cannabis social justice. And I'm happy to be here.
Okay. So, Caleb, can you just tell us why you're here today and what you experienced at Geneva, New York, and why you went there?
Yeah, so I'm here to tell y'all about the USDA Hemp Germplasm Laboratory Field Days. This is actually the 7th year which they've been doing this. So ever since the Farm Bill in 2018, these hemp field studies and field trials, both of rare genetics and also of broadacre plantings have been done at different USDA and ag extension fields around the country. There's one here in California, but there is this one in Geneva, New York, which the USDA is doing with Cornell in Geneva, New York. Was the very first time that I know of that they planted land races and intentionally. And
What's a land race?
so a land race, and that term itself has some controversy attached to it, but landrace cannabis, as opposed to, I guess, like cultivars of cannabis, would be the cannabis varieties, I guess, that would be found in traditional cannabis growing regions of the world, and that have been domesticated by the people in those regions. So, landrace, domesticates, I'll probably be using the two interchangeably.
I got you. Thank you. Thank you for that. And what made you go to this event?
Wow. So I heard about this event through my research assistantship with Dr. Dominic Corva. And he was invited to the event, but unfortunately he was not able to make it because of all the stuff that is being done at the Cannabis Studies Lab here on campus. Luckily, I was able to attend, and it was that opportunity to see so much diversity of cannabis that really drew me there, and also the opportunity to meet with other cannabis researchers that were also traveling from around the world to witness what arguably could be the most diverse field of cannabis sativa that has ever been grown in the world.
speaking of the other people that attended the meeting, what were the type of people that did you meet that you met there, did anybody have a surprising background or experience that you liked?
So the event was completely open to the public, and it'll be open to the public next year as well. So there was a wide variety of people in attendance. I met local farmers, like literally from just down the street, and they were considering growing hemp instead of other broadacre plants that they'd been growing before. And really, I also got to meet many cannabis researchers that I've been looking up to throughout my career, and really to be able to talk with them and pick their brain and spend time with them was a great opportunity for me as a student, I must say.
All right, so now we've heard about the grow and we heard about the land races, but what kind of plants were you seeing in the USDA grows?
So this one test field that I'm talking about, it had around 600 accessions. So accessions meaning like cultivars, varieties that they had secured from various sources. And I guess the first thing that would have struck an observer of this field was that half the plants were males. So, even for the most grizzled veterans of the cannabis culture and industry that were there, they'd never seen a field that had that many males in it. And, that besides the males, really just the variety in everything from, leaf morphology to the heights of the plants to, different stages of flowering or senescence. And I saw every mutation that I'd ever heard of and mutations that I'd never heard of before. And took many pictures. Like I have pictures of types of cannabis now that I never thought that I would see. And I got to smell smells that I never thought I'd get to smell. And really like walking through that field and especially being there with people that like knew which plant was which plant and where it was from, because the labels that were on there weren't necessarily decipherable. It was an incredible experience. The craziest smelling thing that I smelled was apparently a Turkish landrace.
Oh,
Interesting.
Yeah, what were the plants kind of looking like? Like, what did you, like, since we can't obviously show the pictures right here and now, can you describe it?
So, it was just the widest variety imaginable. In one of the other fields, there's a cultivar that they call pea cola. So it literally just has one giant cola. And like I was saying, looks like bamboo, if anything else. And it doesn't do any of that branching stuff. It's meant to be planted right next to its sister or brother, and it's meant to be cut down even before it sexes. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's interesting. That's really interesting.
So what would you say was your specific interest when coming to the event? Like, what was it that you were hoping to kind of see from showing up?
Yeah. Back to Jada's question. That really brings me back to Jada's question. I was really hoping to see those like different mutations and see if like my preconceptions about what cannabis from certain parts of the world would look like, smell like, feel like, how much green, how much purple, what color pistils, the whole, what texture of trichome, all that kind of stuff. I really was looking forward to like, I guess, testing my knowledge and just really like double and triple checking myself and spending that time with other people that had gone through that thought process before, so I could, again, double and triple check. So like, for instance, I came across a plant that was a vining type of plant. And so it didn't stand up. It had like a stalk as strong as you'd expect, but it was literally like crawling along the ground like a manzanita bush or like English ivy. And it was one of these more, I guess, tropically or more equatorial varieties that didn't even start flowering in upstate New York. And, upon finding this vining creeper type cannabis plant, I was talking with a breeder that was there, a seed collector, and, he told me specifically that in his readings of ancient texts from India, where they describe, what is now known as the sensimilla technique of culling the males and whatnot, they noted even back then, centuries ago, specifically that the female plants were more likely to be that vine type, which to me is like a little data point of like which plants nowadays, which cultivars that we know about nowadays are known to have that specific trait. It's definitely not a common trait nowadays. But since coming to Humboldt last year, I've heard multiple times that the original Arcata train wreck, right? We're sitting in Arcata right now. I've heard that the original Arcata train wreck was a vining type. I've heard, people who have the plant now say that still. And to me, that seems indicative that, for train wreck, we could guesstimate that its lineage is from somewhere in South Asia more directly, as opposed to being descended from Mexican or Colombian land races, like a lot of other stuff that is in that family and is still around in California, for instance.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. Just going back to like the land races. So how were the specific land race seeds retrieved by the USDA?
So the USDA started this project several years ago, like I mentioned, and they've been collecting seeds this whole time. They've been accepting germplasm donations. And and it's interesting because like as the USDA, part of their mandate from the U.S. government is to keep seed collections of, any plant that is of economic value to Americans. And so this field that I went to in Geneva, where all the hemp was being grown, was right next to the field where there's like thousands of types of apples. And many of those apple trees are like the only tree of that type of apple remaining. And, it's very cool that the government has like these repositories of germplasm, but in terms of, how that germplasm is sourced, it's been donations, but in terms of how that germplasm is used and how, credit is given to where the germplasm came from originally, I think that is something that I guess I could use more insight into to understand further.
Yeah, and like I feel like a lot of people would be more intrigued into learning about like the history and like the ties with like the geography of it. So that obviously it makes sense to do donations, but it definitely would, I feel like, improve the amount of people going to these events if there was more connection to the land, I think. But just turn to you, Mason.
So, kind of going back to what you said about how the grow started because of the Farm Bill, what would you say were the kind of overall opinion of said Farm Bill at the convention?
So my first thought is I heard differing opinions on like when the next Farm Bill is coming to, shake things up again. I'd say generally people there were happy with the Farm Bill. It opened up, this level of cannabis research, even though it's technically only about hemp. For instance, one of the 3 field days was a high cannabinoid field day, where we were looking at their high cannabinoid hemp, and they had all these, like displays talking about how they're, working on breeding projects for high CBD hemp and high cannabinoids, where, nowadays technically a high THCV variety is considered hemp, even though, those letters are still in there.
Still there. It doesn't change the fact.
Yeah.
kind of bouncing off the people's kind of opinion of it, did you notice any major North American cannabis corporations or conglomerations that had a presence of any sort at the event?
Um, I saw many cannabis researchers, like I mentioned. They could either be working at academic institutions, at international nonprofits, NGOs, or there were some that were working at corporations as well. I guess like with the thing with a stakeholders meeting is that with it being so open, that really you get every type of person there. And in terms of large corporations, one thing that was interesting to see was, I don't know how large these corporations were, but there were people there that were very much like on the hardware side. So, for instance, there was that high cannabinoid day, but then there was also a grain and fiber day. So on that day, the corporate sponsors and people that would attend were, it was a different audience, and they had different types of equipment that were for different, commercial agricultural purposes than I'm used to seeing for sure at cannabis events.
All right, thank you for that, Sonny.
So, can you explain why there's controversy in growing hemp at the research level?
So, let's start that off. We're here at Cal Poly Humboldt, and we're not allowed to grow hemp for
Right.
research.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it's something that is, I would say, rare even now. So, like I mentioned before, there are a handful of other universities besides Cornell that are doing these types of trials. Not in exactly the same way, but let's see. So, with growing cannabis, I guess if the jurisdiction is allowing of it, then that could be that includes at the state level and at the county level. Because here there is a state level like licensure that we could get or permissions that we could get, but at the county level, our hands are tied.
So then, what would you say the future of hemp research would be looking like moving forward?
I would say that I deeply, deeply hope that the future of hemp research involves consideration of all the existing cannabis research. I think that, hemp research and cannabis research need to find the bridge. One has more funding currently, and there needs to be more intensive literature reviews. There needs to be more consideration of existing industry and cultural knowledge in experimental design. Otherwise, we're going to have decades of hemp research that is just reinventing the wheel, even outside of the cannabinoid side.
Right. So when you're saying reinventing the wheel, you're talking about the fact that the hemp industry is kind of turning a blind eye to all of the cultivation practices found for cannabis and starting from the beginning. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The research that I saw being presented was, done to the highest academic standards, and unfortunately, what I've seen is that people who are, I guess this is a pejorative term to some, but people who are up in the ivory tower are not necessarily willing to crawl through internet forums for insight, stuff like that. And it's unfortunate, and it's especially more prevalent at more positivist institutions and places that are more focused on, the hard sciences, which obviously at a hemp germplasm laboratory, they're going to be taking things in a more, some might say rigorous way than we might in a sociology department, but that is just one framing, right?
Yeah.
I definitely feel like the work we're doing here, doing interviews like this, is absolutely rigorous and possibly the only way to get to some of the information that we want to share.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah. I don't have any more questions. Do you guys have anything more to add? I feel like that was a awesome place to end off. But
Yeah, I would like to ask, just like, what would you say the collegiate level cannabis knowledge in New York is compared to here in California?
That's a good question. I think going back to like the experimental design, what I've witnessed is that like when students in particular are doing research, I'd hope that this is still the case, after studentship. But that there's a level of peer review that happens after publication. But then I feel like there should be a level of quote unquote peer review that happens at that experimental design stage. And I guess in general, if we were to take like a school in California versus a school in New York versus a school in, say Russia or China right now, there would be varying levels of, cannabis just knowledge among the average student population. And so that would be one way to look at it where, California, at any California school, you're just more likely to find someone who has smoked cannabis flower before, whether that's hemp flower or marijuana flower. And depending on what school you're at anywhere else in the world, that might be different. And in those instances, someone who is trying to do research should look at the full body of information that has been published already instead of just what's available on Google Scholar or at their school library is what I would say to that. That there are definitely levels to the amount of knowledge, especially in these ivory towers, because historically cannabis users have been kicked out of these ivory towers over and over and over again.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I think that was incredibly informative. And like you were saying, these events are open to the public. So if you do want to get this experience that you're talking about, when would do you know when the next one would be?
I believe it's going to be around the same time, like before the Croptober season. So sometime in September of next year. And I'd really hope to attend again, hope to be able to bring other students with me or see more students there. I think it's a great thing that something like that happens, that there are USDA marijuana fields out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Caleb, and thank you so much, Sonny and Mason, for joining us today.
Thank you for growing with Subsistence Crop, a podcast by the Cannabis Studies Lab at Cal Poly Humboldt.